We'll call the meeting to order. We are being recorded for posterity, so mind your language, I guess. Or not. Thank you all for attending. We'll get right into the agenda. I don't see any public here unless someone else comment. No public comments. Do we have any comments through email? No. Okay. And we need to review the minutes of the last meeting. Any corrections or additions? Everybody was here but Curtis.
Curtis is not here today.
No. No, that's becoming an issue.
Yeah. I move that we accept the minutes as submitted. Second.
And moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Minutes have been approved as submitted. Financial review. I was kind of hoping our financial, what is his title officially?
Finance director.
Finance director would be here to help explain some of this stuff. I have a bunch of questions that are probably easily explained that I couldn't figure out because, you know, generally speaking, you know, if you look at the bottom line on the income report and the bottom line in the expense report, you can figure out how you're doing. That does not work.
No,
These government,
these hard.
But and Chris, perhaps you can explain some of the things. One of the things actually Ryan and I were just talking about it was this third column down on the expenditure status report talks about well, I don't know what it talks about. That's my question. What is that something to do with? There's an expenditure of about $16,000 in the current term. None of it is budgeted. But what does that have to do with the water rule?
What page number?
Page number
13
of the expenditure report.
So what that is, the amortization of the barges is depreciation on the barges. So, yeah, so we had to,
okay.
in years past, the auditors had never asked about them, and they did it this time, so we had to put the 16,000 in.
So we are depreciating the sunk barges.
We are. They've never been
I'm gonna
depreciated.
tell my wife this, she's gonna laugh out loud.
Yeah,
That doesn't count.
so
I would think they would be fully depreciated, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
they're fully underwater.
they're stuck in the mud.
Yeah.
The
muscles appreciate.
Yeah.
So that's what that number is. That's not actual.
Okay, so that is that a number we're going to see? What's the balance in that? What's left to be depreciated?
I don't know that. I can find out.
It's the first year. I think
Yeah.
that they want us to recognize the liability.
Yeah.
Is that what they're doing?
Yeah, they've never been recognized before, so this,
Well, they had to start
Was-
someplace.
Some of
There
it
was
was
a
there had to have
value.
been. Yeah, there was a value at one point, right?
And then
Yeah.
this is probably on a 20, I don't know, if it was a 25-year, you know, expired by now.
How long have they been sunk?
Well, they
since
originally were acquired.
85.
Yeah, since,
They were originally acquired in the early 80s.
80, yeah.
They were retired sawdust barges.
Yeah.
And they were put out there in breakwater and they immediately started getting lower and lower in the water and they were towed over in the side.
Do we have a,
And they're just sitting.
is there an asset one in here that has a total value of it?
I didn't
Not that I'm
find
aware of,
that. I looked, but I didn't find it.
Yeah, you would think there would be.
Are there any other, well, I have another question on the first page of the expenditure status report. And it has to do with the unrestricted fund balance. Because in one place on the revenue report, the unrestricted fund balance says $1,600,000, almost $1,700,000. And here it says $911,000.
Yeah.
So what are we looking at?
I believe that has to do with the bond. Did we refinance? Is that possible? Because that's about the right amount.
Possible, but I don't know why it would look like that.
Yeah.
The unrestricted, in the past, the unrestricted fund balance
Was a reserve.
was a reserve and included the $250,000 that we had to reserve for the original bonds and so forth. That I guess carry over for the new bonds. But yeah, I don't know. But that's a question that I have.
What I can do is collect the questions that we can't answer And then I'll talk to finance director and I can send just a blank email out and you guys can stop by too and ask me.
Okay.
I thought I had this one dialed in pretty good.
I started to do a quick P and L on the gasoline and diesel sales, but I got sidetracked.
Yeah, I did that.
But, anyway, we just need to know. We know that there are timing differences. And whatever we have in inventory, whether we just purchased inventory or not, has an impact on these numbers. So about the only way you can get a good feel for it is to use like 3
Well,
years worth of ending.
Well,
analysis
I did it
and an
for both.
average or something.
I looked at both this year's and last year's, and both came out to our revenues were about 15% more than our expenditures.
15%.
15%, 14 and
Okay.
15
That sounds
respectively.
about
So,
what I had done.
and you know, I first didn't count labor or anything, you know, so.
Right. It's a little tight, but that's a topic we need to address.
Yeah.
Chris, in answer to your question, on page 3 of the expenditure analysis, there is down near the bottom, about 3 lines from the bottom, is the GO bond principal,
That's what that is.
$350,000.
That's what we do.
And that's about what that balance should, and I tried to match that up with the amortization schedule
Uh-huh,
when the thing was approved, and it doesn't match up at all.
right.
Well, I should say, it's kind of in the ballpark, but it doesn't match up directly, which I'm not an accountant, but I spent years analyzing financial statements and stuff for businesses, and it just, there are too many questions that I don't have answers for. Okay, and just as a point of clarification, on that same page, page 3 of the expenditure status report, up near the top, there's an indirect cost allocation of $160,000, and I believe that is typically where the overhead goes.
The parts of the city.
Yeah.
City, yeah.
Right. Is that a fair assumption? Am I reading that correctly? Okay. Whether you like it or not, that's what it is.
That was,
In the next category down, the interfund charges by themselves is another $10,500, which is a lot of other allocated expenses, motor pool, and that kind of stuff. So,
Basically, equipment replacement.
yeah.
But now you were saying that the adjusted, the indirect cost allocation, it looks like it's actually $200,000, right? Or
So that was,
Turn 4, right?
well, that was the expenditure year to date is 204.
Yeah.
It was,
so we've,
I don't know what it is.
So we've
So we
contributed
were
over
allocated,
200,000.
over 200, we were
To the
allocated
city.
160,000 and we
Spent
actually
204.
spent 204.
but we didn't spend it.
Well,
Well, yeah, according to.
well,
sure
it
did.
was- it came out of
We
the
came
fund,
out to
yeah.
the fund and was being part of the city's.
But I don't know how the math is done.
Well, no,
You
nobody.
don't want to.
No, he does. Well, previous people didn't know, but it's an indirect cost. There's a whole formula.
Yeah, that's what, that's,
Very complicated formula, and he did his best to look at it to make sure that
Well,
it
so
was there for
the point that I'm getting at is what would be an accurate budget number for 2023?
Well, it goes up and down, so usually they use the previous years as the point on it. But now that we got a
Based on
finance,
everything.
now that we got a finance director that's better about it, we could probably start going into projection.
Okay.
Capital's a major point in it, and the capital is what makes you swing on it, because it allocates out the engineering costs. So we've been talking about, they haven't done it in a job costing their engineering, but that probably would be a more equitable way of doing it rather than doing it in a dollar amount.
Oh, you
I just don't
only
want to
get to a dollar.
I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but what we're saying is the first $160,000 figure was what we expected to contribute to the city.
That's what I budgeted.
That's what you budgeted. So realistically, now so far, it looks like it's going to be $204,000. So for an additional
This is the
44.
year.
This is the whole year.
This is the whole year.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
This is
Okay.
the 12/31,
That's
22.
So 22.
Yeah.
So instead of 160, we actually put back into the city's coffers $204,000.
He would call that a
According to
true,
this.
he'd call that a true up.
So what I did for 23 and 24 is working off the 160. No,
You really can't work off the one
no,
sixty.
no, actually, I don't,
Yeah.
I didn't budget that number, that's
Right.
true.
Okay.
That's true and correct. I don't
He
think I
puts it-
budgeted.
He
that.
puts it in.
When I did the budget for 23 and 24, the items that I control, I just moved up 3%. That's a standard. And it seems to work based on the year-to-date expenses from the previous year, not what we had budgeted. So I kind of use that as my budget
In the past, I
methodology.
think when Doug Merriman was here, I asked him if he could do this is supposed to be an enterprise fund. You know? And you're supposed to be able to tell how you're doing
Yeah.
by looking at these numbers, and I can't, you know. Good luck.
Doug could
I
understand.
guess anybody that can.
Well, Doug was the one that invented the one that.
A lot of
still
it, yeah,
uses.
and he gave me explanations, and he talked a lot and so forth, I still didn't
Did
understand.
he move his hands a lot too? while he was
Yeah.
doing that?
So-
I still didn't
They're very
understand.
So in talking
But what
about.
I asked him was, can you, for this enterprise fund, for the Marina, can you do a profit and loss? And he knows what that is. And he said, no, not under the RCW, because you have to spread all these numbers out in the format that they tell you to. Because that's what you're audited against. And I just looked at him and said, you know, that's bullshit. He said, yeah, it is. Didn't even.
You know, there's probably enough information here for someone to look at this in general and do a profit and loss. You would think,
Hope so.
we know what the revenue was, we know what the expenses were.
Yeah, the problem I had was, first of all, it took me a while to figure out what we spent in principal on the bonds and the interest on the bonds. We got a little bit of interest allocated to us, like $8,000 or something from, I guess, from the investment portfolio. So that is, I think I've got that one figured out, the 362,000 or whatever. I said, it doesn't match up with the amortization schedule that we were given when we refied the bonds, and I don't know why. I think it's a timing thing. But I'm not comfortable with that response. I'd like to.
Paul, when you did your analysis, you somehow remember the figure that you came up with, that we were 180,000, we add 180,000 to the, to our reserves yearly. Is that what you came up with?
It was different from year to year.
Yeah, but that's about right. Well, so somehow you were doing that's a profit and loss number, right? How did you come up with that one?
So just using these numbers
Well-
and allocating them. And, you know, we talked with the finance director about some of the expenses, which are just paper. They're not
Yeah.
expenses, but this is an important part of it. It's really figuring out what the net revenue is available for debt service.
Yeah.
Because it's really thin. Even if this 200,000 were in there, it's still a real thin number and looking at the balance as well at 600,000.
What does that mean? What does the 600,000 mean?
Which 600,000?
The last line.
The last line, yeah,
The bottom line.
that's what I was
What does it
questioning
really
last
mean?
Yeah.
So the way that I read these is twofold. I look at the categories that we can control. Repair and maintenance, professional service, office supplies, those sorts of things. And I keep an eye on those throughout the year. I also keep an eye on the ones I can't control, but I can't control those. I can control the other ones. So that's kind of how I look at the revenue and expenditures. And then at the end of each month, I look at how this compares to the previous year and how it compares, the revenue compares to the expenses, which we know in the Marina world is extremely different if this even was a straight profit and loss statement. Because we know that in December, January, February, we're gonna have way more expenses than revenue, and then it flips halfway through the year. So it's not like per se a store or something where you can say,
No,
you can
but
track it.
But if you look at a whole year.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
that's where I'm getting at, is I get to the end of the year and I look and see, did we bring in more than we paid out?
So,
And that's.
so did we, that's what the 600,000 is?
We don't know.
No,
We don't-
no. So if you simply take the revenue and subtract it from the expenses. So our revenue was,
So it didn't do it for us.
no, it doesn't do it for you, you have to do it manually. And this is how I do it each month, just to make sure that we're on track. And this year, I think that it went backwards a little bit.
Yeah, it should have, because we did not adjust for the new bonding
Right.
rate.
So
The
three,
shorter amortization, and
Yeah.
it was the same dollar, roughly same dollar amount, plus 200 and some $1,000 worth of the costs of doing the new bond. But the rate went down. So we only paid about, if I remember correctly, about $12,000 or so in interest.
you know what, actually? These are 123 through 1223, not 122 through 1222.
It says 1222.
Does yours say 1222?
Yeah, it says 1231.
So the revenue
On
says
the
1223.
So I
And the-
printed
the
wrong
expenditure
revenue.
says-
Oh, yeah.
So that's where the confusion
Yeah,
is. So
I-
what we can do, and that's my fault, I apologize,
Okay,
is bring this back at another meeting. So
Okay, let's-
that-
all right,
because
let's
we're
do that.
not,
but in terms of generic questions, the cost
see what
allocation,
I did?
the bond amortization,
23 and 22.
Yeah,
whereas the bond amortization is still an issue, because that's one of the elements that we've got to address in terms of our pricing structure. We didn't address it, we agreed to subsidize it for 2022, right? And, I don't know, it wasn't a huge number.
it went up about 30 cents.
Yeah.
30 cents. And Paul's actually, that's a great segue. Paul's here to talk about the rate study and stuff, so. I will send out the 1220, I will send out 122 through 1222 to you guys in an email.
Okay.
But yeah, sorry.
So can anybody tell us what that, the last thing in the expense, the last number in the expenditure report, what does that signify? 660,000.
That is, so I budgeted, that's what this column is,
Okay,
3.132,
yeah,
but I only spent we only spent 2.472. That's the difference between those two numbers. That's the leftover unused budgeted amount.
So it should have been added to reserves.
Right, no,
But
it's
that's
not added to
after-
reserves.
Well, because we don't know what the revenue was.
Right.
yeah, and
Right.
plus,
Well,
and plus
yeah,
there
we're
was a
still
lot
not
of things,
comparing
there's some of those things we just talked about that were appropriated, but that we spent more on. Like,
That's right.
Yeah.
But
there was-
overall, you
Yeah,
spent
go
less
ahead.
than what you budgeted.
Overall, we only spent 78.92% of the budgeted amount.
Just for the benefit of this group, I always look at the beginning fund balance category.
Yeah.
The way it's budgeted
Yeah.
and the balance, because there are no adjustments for revenues or
Yeah.
anything in that number. But I don't know what that number is. I don't have a good feeling about that. Because it's larger than it was a year ago, which doesn't make sense to me, because we spend more in debt service. But, you know, it's theoretically possible.
And we spent, we spent a bunch of other stuff on consulting fees. and-
Major repairs.
Yeah, major repairs.
Yeah, that's not.
Sorry.
Kathy, you know what?
Yeah, sorry.
This sunken asset.
So at the next meeting, we'll bring this back.
Okay, okay.
And I'll email that out to you so you can look at it. And between now and the next meeting, if you have questions, feel free to come talk to me as well.
Could Dave be here for that?
I can ask.
You know, just, he knows how to interpret this
Yeah.
stuff, and we don't. And really, you know, there was, on the income side, there was like $50,000 or $15,000 for a clean vessel grant.
That's what we budgeted for 23.
Income
But
is
it
all
didn't show.
23.
It's all 23.
Oh, I see, okay. I got it, never mind. So you will get us the
Yeah.
year-end 2022 revenue numbers.
I've been looking at those too and trying to figure out what the net is. And it's a thin margin, this revenues minus
Oh, yeah.
expenses, so. It does, what we're gonna talk about with the rate system, that's the revenue piece of it, but there is the expense piece as
So
well.
do we have, Chris, do you have any idea what the revenue was for 1/22 to 12/22? Because we're looking, I mean, if we know what the expenses were, we know the expenses were 2,000,004 and some change, right?
Right.
So if we know what the revenue was, I mean, we can probably figure out at least close to what.
Yeah, it wouldn't be itemized.
Wouldn't be itemized, but I'd be curious to know
Yeah, that would be
where we are.
Easy for you to send it to kind of-
I don't know if I can, I'm gonna try and access it from here and see.
So, yeah, the beginning fund balance,
I can
and then
log on to
as
it.
close as we can get to the actual
No, wait,
expense
I
minus, I mean, revenue minus expenses.
Yeah, and if, and it might codify Paul's numbers.
Okay.
and always
Say, Chris, I have
Roughly
the preliminary on it.
$100,000.
Is that gonna be?
That's really close.
Okay, yeah, I think it is.
Wait,
Wait,
we
hold on,
might have it.
wait, I got it. So,
Yeah,
I had
have
sent
that
it
at
to-
home, I don't have it.
so. So we got,
I had sent it to him about a month ago,
Yeah.
so it's really close, not much
so,
has changed.
so we've got, 1901 thousand dollars.
Say that
So
one more time.
1,901,000.
So that would be.
That's revenues.
Yeah,
That's
That's
right,
right.
that means we lost a lot of money.
That's right. That's exactly what I was getting at.
The only way we would lost money if it was the way the bond revenue was, well, that's, yeah. Exactly. Yeah, but that
What are
would
the
be the accounting
expenses?
way, right?
The expenses were 2.472.
2.472.
And our revenues were what?
1.901, so we lost,
$500,000.
yeah, $500,000. Well, more, yeah,
And
570.
a lot of that was because we sucked up we had about 1.6 million, I think.
But we were also spending money like crazy
Yeah,
too.
but there was 300 and, well, plus about 365,000 that went to debt service that
Right.
wouldn't be on here.
There's a depreciation number in here too of 153,000. And from a bond perspective, I'm looking at page
Oh, yeah,
one of the expenditure report.
depreciation
There's
expense.
$153,000
Yeah.
bucks, and you're looking at it from a bond perspective, you wouldn't include that
Right,
in what net revenue you have available for
Yeah.
that service.
and typically we have not had a number there for depreciation. I don't know why, but
So when you look at it, that makes sense, the 350 for the bond and then that 150 there, that's right.
There's your $500,000, and
Yeah, but it truly was only 350.
so we would still lose, the revenue would
from
be
an
in the-
operating standpoint.
From an operating standpoint, the revenue would be, we'd be in the hole, $180,000
For last operating.
for the last operating year, which is a big change from historically what we've been doing. And what is that attributable to? Is it attributable to the fact we're selling less diesel fuel? Is the occupancy lower?
Mhm.
Or is it just that the expenses are so much higher on an aging facility that, yeah, we
That's kind
can
of all
almost,
the above.
expect
That's
that.
kind of all the
in the
above, but the
future.
biggest chunk of it though is the finance issue with the bonds.
Well, we took the finance issue out, right,
Yeah,
realistically.
But from a cash standpoint.
Right, gotcha there, but realistically, when you look at total
Yeah.
revenue, operating revenue versus expenses, we're losing money.
I don't know if I could reach that conclusion.
Yeah,
Well,
no, because if you take
I
the,
think
if
we
we had
have
to
to
refinance the bond,
Yeah,
Right.
we'd have had that 350. And so that would have made a difference, so,
but still, we would probably be in the hole $100 and some odd $1,000, no?
no, because if you add that 350 back in, take it out of the expenses, then
Well,
You have the
Well,
depreciation.
we'd have to see it
Yeah,
written down.
Right.
we'll have to get smarter on this or get dumber. That would be the easy.
Dumber would be much simpler, you'd
Yeah.
be comfortably numb.
If we could get to the, beginning balance in our reserves.
Yeah.
And then however we reach it, a gross operating number,
Right.
Yeah,
we could make some decisions about
exactly.
where we need to be going forward.
But were the expenses that much greater in 2022 than they've been?
No.
I don't
So-
think so.
So we're gonna point a lot of fingers at the refinancing of the bond.
Well, and that's a
Well-
good thing, I mean,
Yeah.
the way I look at it is that you've got to have enough of a margin of net revenues available for debt service that you can pay for these improvements.
Sure.
And so you have to be mindful about what sorts of things you can do to increase revenue and what kinds of things you can do to decrease expenditures.
But to the casual observer, they're not seeing the marina having all these great new features or these newly renovated docks or newly renovated power stations. They don't know that it takes an inordinate amount of money to just keep us going.
Yeah.
When you have an aging facility like this.
Okay, so here,
Correct.
last month, I did look at the expenses that were up relative to the year before. Repairs were up $80,000 relative to the year before.
Yeah.
Insurance was up $20,000 relative to the year before.
Glad you did.
The city allocation, the $200, that was up $40,000. And then the debt was $250,000. So, so we spent a lot more money. We spent, not including the debt, we spent $140,000
Yeah.
more than we did the previous year.
Which is, as Paul has told us, is our delta, which is what we tend to be able to put aside every year or close to it.
Right.
Well, I kind of apologize for bringing up the topic, but I think we discovered that we don't know what we don't know. And
Right.
so we'll move on with Paul's presentation from BST and Associates on I don't know, does this discussion,
It's
Sort of.
all important, I'm just looking at
but I
rates.
think we've muddied the water is what I'm.
No, I don't think so. You have to get comfortable with the financials and how, what I'm talking about rates. And then, look to see whether there's some way to reduce expenses.
Because we know we're not gonna rate our way out of this.
No.
No, not completely. If we're looking at, if it's roughly $80,000 per slip, thanks, President. And you're putting in 200 of them to 300 of them, just for the marina itself, you're looking at, 16 to $24 million. And that doesn't include dredging in the basin, and it doesn't include the breakwater, and it doesn't include dredging out of the channel.
So you're saying all new floats.
All new
New
floats,
configuration.
rebuild it, reconfigure
New
it.
utilities.
And so I've been concerned about that for you in terms of how you can come up with that kind of money.
Oh, thank you.
So let me go through this with
After he
you.
does this, we'll circle back to this.
Okay.
This is a draft presentation. Let's see, is there a way to do that with a figure?
Want to make it full screen
Yeah, 5.
for my old eyes?
There we go. Perfect. It's a little bit better. It's still kind of small. All right, so what we said we would look at is review the rates for Oak Harbor Marina, including all rates that you charge right now, rates charged at other comparable marinas that are not charged at Oak Harbor, compare the rates, assess rate increase impacts on occupancy. That's something that we still need to tweak a little bit, and then prepare a rate schedule for 2023 through 2027 5-year plan. Present it to you and then present it to the council. So our methodology, basically starts with you're not sustainable right now with existing rates or expenses. I pull that in as well. And the goal really is to review that with comps. So we, in the process, look at the average rates up among the comparables that I'm going to show you, the median and the 90th percentile. Well, we worked on Des Moines, for example. We basically said that they need to go to 90th percentile in order to pay for what we think they're going to do, what it's going to cost them. And that put
90th percentile of the surrounding,
Of the surrounding
comparable,
comps, right,
comparable,
yeah,
comparable
Okay.
being the key.
right. And so, just to plant a seed on that right now, I'm gonna recommend you look at median. You know, when you look at a distribution and like millionaires in your community, you've got 3 millionaires and you've got 50 people that are making 50,000, and you look at what the average wage is, you're way over there towards the million. And so what the median does is it takes 50% above and 50% below. So it kind of, it takes account of lower rates and higher rates.
So average is the mean, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the 90th percentile. So that's kind of where I'm going to head with this. And like anyone else, I kind of stand back and say, okay, where is the money? What are you guys generating right now? And 60% is the permanent mortgage. And this is just bare bones without the temporary dredging fee. And it also doesn't include the environmental compliance. The temporary mortgage is 11%. So if you have those two together, mortgage is 71% of your base. Storage sheds are next at 10%. The net fuel sales is 4.9%. This is percent of gross revenue. Guest mortgage is 5%. Environmental compliance is 3%, and then some other factors that are 2% and 1%.
Paul, we get copies of this.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll email that out.
Yeah.
It's really sad that only 5% of our revenue comes from guest mortgage. That is really, that's disappointing.
Yep.
That is very disappointing.
But you have to remember that we discount the guest mortgage a considerable amount based on the fuel sales. So if you're a guest, you get 20 cents off a gallon.
Yeah, but we aren't making any money on fuel.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
so
yeah.
on the mortgage side, it's kind of a two-edged sword. As you approach 100% occupancy, your transient mortgage goes down.
Right,
You just don't have
and
sales.
sure, but yeah.
But anyway,
Paul might be able to tell us, but are there any
There are.
other marinas that around here that are only generating 5% of their revenue from guest mortgage?
It depends on the size of the marina.
Yeah.
So Cap Sandy, I think they do around 700,000, but they're in the multi-million. So it's not a big percentage.
It's not a big percentage?
Yeah. There's some marinas, and we're doing some work for Port of South Whitby right now, and they're almost all transient mortgage. But you've got to remember that that's all spiked in just a couple of months. So you can't use those slips. We did some work for the city of Kirkland, and they're all transient as well. You just don't find that many of those because when you have permanent tenants and you can get paid whether they're boating or not, that's how these marinas work. You've got to get that money coming through.
How can you, fuel sales, how can you compare us there?
You're low.
Yeah.
The margin's low.
Margins,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I'll address that here. And then the dredge fee. And so there's a schedule right now. This may change, if with interest rates, but you were at 131. We're looking at $1.60, $1.60 in 2023, $1.88 in 2024, and $2.16 in 2025. So the numbers I'm going to be showing you in the comps are all in. So you'd have to back out the dredge fee in order to see what net is available there to cover your other expenses, as well as whatever you have to put in reserves for bond issues.
And we should also say that we did not make that increase in January because we've been going through this
Right.
process.
Yeah. Now, my recommendation for the city is that the city's got to take care of the dredging and the wastewater. There aren't revenue generating operations. And
Good trade-off with indirect costs.
well, that may change that window as well in terms of what those
Yeah.
indirect costs are. But yeah. And again, it's like a construction project where you've got land ready to build, or whether you've got to do a lot of work on it and fill some wetlands and do some other things before you can build a building. It just costs more for construction. Okay, so here's a couple of examples on the open slips. I did this for all of your size ranges, but this one shows from 35 to 38. And we looked at Elliott Bay and Shill Shoal and Anacortes and Edmonds and Winslow Wharf and Skyline and Friday Harbor and Everett in the central and south basins, Des Moines, Cap Sandy, Kingston, Port Townsend, Squalicum, Skyline, South Whitby, Blaine, Squalicum, and LaConner, and Shelter Bay, and indicated whether they were an annual rate or a monthly rate. I know this is another thing that it's an issue of what those rates ought to be, but you're down of this group, you're down towards the bottom, and you can see in the orange, the median slide says you really ought to be at 1234, and you're at 937 monthly and 873 on annual. And that's it as of today. Now, my recommendation isn't that you make that change all at once. I see that kind of building in, but your 40, if you were going to raise Oak Harbor rates to these levels, you'd have to raise 41% to get to the median, 32% to the median, 41% to the average, and 75% to the 90th percentile. Well, that's a big pop.
Yeah, no, the exodus would be amazing.
Well, you know, that's a question. You know, that's another thing we've been asked to address. And certainly last time when the dredge fee came on, it impacted smaller boats more than bigger boats. And you know, our sense of it is still that it's tough to get spaces for bigger boats.
Yeah.
So in that exodus, like you point out, and not justifying raising rates like that, but last time when we did the dredge fee and you had that exodus, it was at a time where, because I remember people would turn in their slip to go cruising in the summertime and come back and get a slip in the winter because there just wasn't those big waiting lists.
Right.
Now, if you say, well, I'm pissed off that you raised our rates, where are you going to go?
Yeah, I think there are some slips available, but not
Any cheaper than this.
No, it wouldn't be cheaper. But, you know, I keep coming back to this, and we are not comparable to those marinas. We don't have any shoreside attractions at all. Almost every one of those marinas up there is located in an area where you can walk easily to restaurants, you know, and
Not all of them, but, you know, that's a
almost all
point.
of
But I guess my question is,
I don't mind.
I think this is an existential situation for the marina.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That you don't have them and you're not gonna get them.
Yeah,
that's true.
So you either have a marina or you don't have it.
That's right. Yep, that's exactly right.
You know, I think about amenities, and it's something I've thought about for years, obviously, but do amenities draw the tenant or do they draw the guest?
I guess, yeah.
So how does that affect our tenants when we're
Yeah,
talking
it does.
about the rate?
Well, I don't know.
Because we have the yacht club
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
people that want those sorts of things,
Yeah.
join the yacht club and you have your bar, you have your restaurant, you have your,
Yeah.
you know, events.
And the guests do, a lot of
And the
guests do
guests
come up
come
there.
there.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't mind paying more, and I'll put on my everyman hat for a minute. I don't mind paying more if my facility is better, if my facility is upgraded, if I'm, if I don't have to climb over things to get to my slip, and and Chris, I'll say this again, his crew does an amazing job, and Chris does a great job of keeping the marina going, and I appreciate it tremendously. But I don't appreciate it 75% more than I'm paying now.
Yeah.
You know, and that's if for 75% more than I'm paying now, I'll take my chances at a private slip in Anacortes, and I'll be 2 hours closer to the cruising grounds.
Yeah.
And I'll be at my boat in 22 minutes. So
So there's
that's
trade-offs, and
yeah.
there may be some people that leave boating. You
Yeah.
know, it could be that that's the choice too, or if they've got smaller boats and they can trailer them, they trailer.
So, but we're not looking at the 90%. You're just giving a number for
Yeah,
comparison.
that's.
You're not even going, you're not even looking at average. You're recommending to getting somewhere in the median, which is the lowest out of the three indicators.
Yeah.
Right, which is what, like,
And we're
32%,
32%.
37.
For that slip size, and they're a little bit different for each of them, but here's another example of the 50 to 59 slips, foot slips. open slips, it would be a 37% increase. So looking across all of them, here's, it's basically for the median is between 22% and 42% increase, depending on the slip sizes. It's a little smaller on the low end of the slips, the 26s and the 27 to 30 footers. And then it grows a little bit. And there's some differences in the way it's priced here versus some of the other marinas. But you're getting close to around a 40% pop there at the end.
It seems to me that the people that we're gonna drive out at rate increases are gonna be the people with the small boats.
I would agree with
So,
that.
I think it would make sense to, think about not increasing those people much at all, but putting the burden
On the bigger boats?
Yeah.
The problem is that you've got this existing facility that's almost all little slips. So if you're gonna gather this money to rebuild it, everybody's gonna have to pay something. But I think you're right, and that's something that concerns me about how many of them might leave. So this is, however, I'm not sure how many of them are even paying this rate. There's another deal that's $55 a month.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Which
we-
filled
that's
up,
lower than I can
those
find
docks.
anywhere.
They were empty.
And Chris's plan filled up those docks.
Yeah.
And
It
we
absolutely
went
did.
through that whole discussion and
Yeah.
variety of solutions and stuff back in, I don't know, 4 years ago or so. Something.
Yeah.
Whenever
It was
we-
right before you got to that,
Whenever we initiated
that
the
summer
$55
deal.
thing.
Yeah.
That
Because we
deal's
had-
less than $3 a foot.
Yeah, that's
So you
amazing.
can't find a deal like that.
No.
And when I talk to people about that, and right now we're in the process of switching over to the higher rate, there is a little bit of kind of dissension as far as raising the rate. I asked them to average it out over the years. I say, take that $55 a month plus the extra amount, average it out over the year, and you're gonna be around $80 or $90 a year, which is still for $80 or $90
Below
a
anything you can
month.
get.
It's still, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But as I've thought about
Plus
our
you're throwing
rates-
in fence line storage along with it.
Right, that's an additional $59.
Yeah.
As I've thought about our rates, and maybe I'm jumping the gun, but I started thinking about our annual contract and stuff like that. We still need to do that.
Annual
Well, this
contracts
is-
are a good deal, I think.
Now, the one idea I have from your perspective, and I hear this at Des Moines, for example, is cash flow. That you're getting a lot of money right at the beginning of the year during some slim months.
Well, we let them pay month to month. We just divide it.
Well,
Yeah.
we gotta stop doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, if they can pay right at the beginning of the year and it's a net prepayment, that's the way most of the other rates do. It's a prepayment, a full prepayment. So you're getting an annual amount in January
Right.
1st.
We were just looking at ways to retain people. when we brought it in.
Yeah, I've got some slides on that one, but so this is the way I'm looking at it, is this is the open slips, it's a 20% to 40% roughly increase to get to where that median is. And running that up, I'm suggesting that we do that over a 3-year period. So you do it in 23, 4, and 5. And then, so on an annual basis, the biggest hit, the 40 to 48 footers are paying 14% per year. That pop goes for 3 years, 14%, 14%, 14%. And then I plugged in 5%. Typically you want to have your rates link up with what your expenditures are too.
What was the 5% number?
Just the last 2 years.
Oh.
Over 3 years, we take that, we say it's 21%, so it's 7% for 3 years in a row. So that we know we're still below what they were. And every time I've done one of these, and I've done a lot of them, you'd never catch up. If
No,
you're
it's
doing
still-
a 3 or a 5 year, you never catch up with where everybody else is.
3 years from now, we'll look at this again and we'll be in the exact same position.
Well, as long as the wedge between revenues and expenses have increased, then we've got more money coming in that may be able to pay some debt service, then there's going to be continued pressure on moving those rates up. But at least it's getting the city to a spot where they can go ahead and say, we can pull the trigger on building the marina. That's kind of what what my take is on how this might go forward.
So if you want to maximize city participation, your justification is we're maximizing revenue.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there is no more, you can only get out of the turn, they'll
That's
say,
right.
you squeezed it, we squeezed it as much. So, I mean, that's the point, is we've squeezed it as much as we can. We've done this analysis here. We're doing the aggressive rate increase, so therefore we need help with other expenditures that we can't put in there. So we'll continue to look for grant funding and.
Yeah, it's all of
There's
that.
other opportunities for the breakwater and other
It's
things.
just,
Is this predicated on a new slip configuration?
yes.
Okay.
Well, I guess it sort of transitions. The way I'm thinking about it with the slip sizes that we've got here, it's imposed upon the existing conditions.
Well, I guess though, I see where I can ask the question, I think I'm reading his mind, is the opportunity out there is the bigger slips,
Mhm.
is the bigger
Right,
boats. We want to maximize the revenue, as Blaine had indicated. You reconfigure, get the bigger boats, and take the extra revenue. That,
Yeah, and when we do that, if we do that, and I recommend strongly that we do that, but if we reconfigure and have bigger slips for bigger boats and all sort of thing, our percentage of locals is gonna go down substantially. And that's where a lot of the screaming and yelling is gonna come from.
okay.
And,
Yeah.
I just,
I mean, the idea, what we're trying to do, and what everybody is here is focused on, is making the marina viable.
Yeah.
And we have, the only way to make the marina viable, from what I'm hearing, is to get rid of the small slips, maximize that, get bigger boats that we can get to that level of participation, and optimize the revenue. And so the city's happy, you're happy, I'm always happy. But that just makes sense to me. Why should we put this huge burden on, the tenants who are here now that have the bigger boats, without trying to get more bigger boats to pay their share and increase our, because we're not gonna rate change our way out of the predicament we're in. Not where
It's
we are,
gonna
not where we
help.
are right now. It will help,
It's gonna help.
it'll help. But if you change the mix, it's gonna help a lot more.
It's gonna help a lot more, but I think, Ken, you're spot on. Every time we've looked at this, you've got all those small boats, you have to do something to take care of them.
I agree with that.
You've got fence parking, you've got sheds,
Yeah.
maybe you've got some Mariners Havens, you've got a rebuilt ramp so that it's easier to get in, and you keep some slips. And the other thing is, this is gonna be a phased development. It's not gonna be, bam, you do the whole thing. It's gonna be, you do this piece and then you add these slips, and so you're gonna be living with what you've got for 10 years.
while,
or
yeah.
But you look at VDOC, you walk down VDOC, there's what, 1,000 linear feet either side of that, that's basically gone unused, completely unused. And if we believe the waiting lists, that 1,000 linear feet, could be generating an awful lot of revenue.
Those, all of the 24-foot slips are sold, whether there's a boat in there or not, they could be on the fence line, they're paying
Right.
on that. The category that's hurting us, that drags everything down, is the 28-foot, which is
D-dock.
from the end of the covered V dock and all of D dock.
D-dock.
That's what's dragging everything down. And it can be an illusion in the winter if you walk down D dock, because we have, all the club stuff in there, it's filling those slips.
yeah, you say.
So they're not necessarily generating revenue,
But all the VDOC slips are full,
All of the covered V dock slips are full and all of A dock
and
is
there's
sold.
there's no boats in there.
They're on the fence line and a lot of guys are still keeping
They're
their
filled
boats.
at $55.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
At $55.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the other
And they-
thing I
their
guess
wives
is,
don't want them parking the boat.
That's
Shit,
right.
I'll take 2 of them. I'll put my tractor in one.
so the other part of this is, in terms of looking at how it's rebuilt, is what's the best from just a physical standpoint, where would you build the basin? And it isn't where A and B dock are. So you're not gonna rebuild anything there. It's gonna be walking to deeper water with slips that are the size that make sense.
Well, Yeah, the caveat there is that deeper water is what we make it,
Right.
dredge it to,
Mhm.
because you don't find it by going further out.
No, that's it, yeah.
That's why we don't have any mooring buoys,
Yeah.
because they have to have 10 feet of water at a
That
minus
mean- yeah.
something.
That mean low water.
Yeah, and you can't do that because it's too shallow.
But there's gotta be some thought about what to do with the smaller boats.
Yeah.
And you can't get away from that. You're gonna hear from them, believe me, this,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
But
there's a lot of them.
one other consideration though, we're trying to attract larger boats. We build larger slips. I think in order to compete with that market, we're still, we have to have hauling facilities. I think. Nobody's gonna wanna pay this kind of money for a big boat when they've gotta take it up to Anacortes to
To
get
get
it
it
out.
out, yeah.
And we're working on that.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, there's a lot of moving.
So, I mean, there are a lot of moving parts here, but, I mean, realistically, could we reconfigure DDOT in the short term to attract, angled fingers
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
maximize the amount of boats we can put along DDOT?
Well, just to answer that, we addressed that issue with DDOC. And one of the grant requests that we had outstanding was to reconfigure, take out all the interim slips in the covered areas and have side ties.
Yeah, that was the
And we
plan.
did the grant request because, well, we didn't have the money. And
Did
that
we
was
get the
through the
grant?
clean water folks, or I can't
No,
remember
we
now
didn't
what the.
We
but
did,
We didn't get it, we weren't successful.
we
Because
were,
and increasing the slope on the launch track was in that same basket of grant requests.
Doesn't tie into salmon recovery, that's why.
No.
yeah, there was, so it was one of the three parts of the boat ramp,
Yeah, I remember
all
that,
of those
yeah.
pieces.
But I
And the
mean-
city council didn't like those.
Could the reconfiguration of DDOT be done locally?
It could be, there is a plan to remove all of the covered area there, take off all the fingers on the east side where that huge fairway is.
Right?
I want to say that DDOC is 500 or 600 feet long.
But the pilings are the issue.
The pilings are at the ends of the fingers, so they'd have to be moved in. And then make all of
Yeah.
that, make all of that side tie. So if you're putting, say, 50 footers in there, that'd be approximately 10 or 11 feet.
There is an alternative to that.
And that could be.
You go anywhere in Florida and people are backing in and they're tying to those, they're med tying, they're tying to those pilings at the end of
Yep.
a finger.
Yes.
Yeah, but you have to secure the finger.
You have to secure the
Yeah,
dot.
it's a minor issue. But I mean, realistically,
Yeah,
I mean,
I've seen
none of
those
this
mooring
stuff
boats that are round,
is
like life.
too hard.
No,
My wife and I watch a lot of BritBox and other foreign stuff, and we look for these
There's some
marinas,
pretty
and I say,
interesting stuff.
see, there's another marina that doesn't have any slips at all.
They back
Mooring
in,
buoys
or
or.
they'll
Yeah.
they'll
Yeah.
back into
Yeah.
it.
Well,
It's-
Well, a lot of those marinas don't have the winds that we have.
Yeah.
Like that's our big thing. is-
And the tidal variation.
And I see the side ties, especially out at the end, the last two next to us, that just get beat up in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Let me keep going. So let's look at the covered now, same situation, median 42% below, or you'd have to raise your rates 42% to get there. And 50s, 42% for them as well. So it's the exact same thing, we're somewhere, for the smaller ones, you're closer, it's only 10%, but it goes up to 45% for the 32s.
would you say that the numbers you used are the new 2023 rates at these marinas?
Yeah, they're all 2023, yeah. I had to wait on some of them. LaConner just put theirs in and they popped their rates pretty good. I think they went up 8%. Edmonds went up 11%. So we're starting to see after CPI popping up, they had CPI plus 1% or some other formula, or everything's full around them. They're starting to see those rates increase.
Is LaConner full?
They're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah. They've got a big dredging problem too.
Well, they have two dredging issues. One is the channel.
Yeah.
Is the Sonoma's channel and inside the marina.
Yeah.
They've got a real issue inside the
I've
marina
heard
as
the
well.
wells go ground in that channel.
Not me, but people do.
So exactly the same thing here, looking at the increases, the biggest pop would be for the 32 footers, 15% for 3 years and then 5% after that. You know, then you get to some revenue, some rates in 2027 that as you're starting, hopefully to phase in some new slips. You may even require that there's another increase for people using the new floats. That's another alternative.
And you've moved the number from 3 to 5%. We've always done it 3%. We've moved it to 5,
Yeah.
which will help us well.
5%, I think, is, you know, especially looking at what's happening with O&M costs, these insurance costs that you're talking about and repair work.
We should be thankful we
Do you
still
have
have
any
it.
sort of feel for
Yes.
what,
At any cost.
upland source of incomes,
Yes.
some of these comparable places
Yeah,
have?
several of them do have that. They've got leases. I tell you, the ports though typically have a property division and all of the properties are in that division. That money isn't thought to be included in the marina. And we did some work in Westport and we had them look at that and they were making as much from the property as they were from the basin. Yeah. And it still wasn't enough to pay for much. Yeah, I mean, that's another thing is to think about what sorts of alternatives there might be to get a restaurant or to do something else like that.
I was thinking even of dry stack mortgage for small boats,
Mhm.
that kind of stuff, but it still takes a footprint.
It takes about an acre. Yeah,
It does?
yeah. Now you could do, you know, typically they're 150 to 200 boats. You could just have a smaller portion of them, but then your operating costs would be higher.
I was just thinking of that one at Everett in the North Marine,
Yeah,
that dry stack storage in there.
that's about 200 bayside. They're looking at increasing that. And you know, those buildings now, they were $3 or $4 million. Now they're around 10 million.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
So the rates, a lot of them are holding off. Phil Reese is thinking about one up at Seaview.
Seaview?
Yeah.
I'm gonna see him Wednesday.
Are you? Say
Yeah.
hi. Yeah. Okay, on the annual rates, you guys have an 8% discount now. Other marinas, some other marinas do. South Whitby's got a 4%. Cap Sandy and Blaine and Squalicum have a 5%. There's a big one in Skyline. It's like $14.50 monthly and $11 if you do an annual contract with them. A lot of the private operators like Port Hadlock and those operations, they don't have monthlies anymore. They want an annual contract.
Really?
Yeah, because they need to know
And
they've got
annual
that
payment.
cash flow.
Yeah, did
Yeah,
Port Ludlow do that as well?
I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
they're headed that way, yeah. Elliott Bay used to have a 10% discount for annual customers. So if you were there for 6 months, you paid the full rate, then you got a 10% discount. So it wound up being 5%. But when they were purchased by the private operator, they got rid of all of that. So we start to see fewer of them. I would recommend that if you have one, and I was thinking if it helps you on cash flow, have it be prepayment.
Yeah.
And then maybe reduce to 5%. Yeah. That's the only thing I can think of where it benefits you. The only other way is that if you are having trouble filling slips. And hopefully that's not the problem. It's definitely not the problem now, but 10 years from now. You know, there was an interesting thing at the boat show. We've done some survey work on this most recent Seattle boat show. 20% of the people was their first time being at a boat show. And there's a lot of young people, you know, which kind of, I has to ask the guy if he was discriminating against old people by not having any pictures of
They're gonna inherit their parents' boats.
That's a good
and
sign.
money. So there's a lot of that happening, you know, where this like $30 billion or something.
Well, if you're going to go to a discount for prepaid annual payments, I think it's gonna have to be more than
It will.
5% because
I'm not gonna tie it.
the way interest rates are
Yeah.
now. I mean, that might have worked a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But not now.
Well, or maybe change it as the conditions.
Yeah, I
Maybe
wouldn't
we're
tie
not
up my
gonna-
money for 5%.
Maybe we just suspend that program.
Suspend
Well,
it yearly.
but the good part about it is you don't have these people that are, if the marina isn't full, people are leaving for the summer and just not pouring and coming back and, you know, and we've had a lot of that, I think, haven't we?
Not recent.
Not recently, because the marina's getting more full.
Yeah.
But in those years where we weren't
You
full.
can always count on it.
Yeah, you would give your 30 days
Yeah,
notice
right.
when we were full, and then you can count on one.
Yeah.
Right.
That's not.
Yeah, like now, if you give up your slip, because I want to go cruising into Canada, you can come back to no place to put your boat. Like, that's not a good spot to be
I'm
in.
paying for a slip up in Canada, a slip down here, so I don't lose a slip down here.
And it's a real burden for staff when people are called every day to try and find, are there still slips available? So yeah,
I just walked down that dock, there's lots of slips.
Yeah.
already paying.
But that sounds reasonable to me, that this could be higher or get rid of it, one or the other. It's nice to get people tied up for a year.
Yeah, I think so.
From, you know.
It's guys
I
like
think-
us who are really flighty. I mean, how long you been in the marina?
Well, kind of like what we were saying, the available slips. Like if you, and I like a discount more than anybody, but like if you got rid of the yearly discount, like I would pay it because there's no other place to go. You know what I mean? And I would imagine that would probably be the same across the board with most tenants.
And that's the current condition, but Byron's right. If that changes, and it's encouraging to hear that, you know, the boat show numbers, then you could get in that position where people just get 30 days notice, knowing there'll be a slip if they come back. But that's not the case in any.
I don't
market
see,
right
yeah, I
now.
don't see that happening. Like if that trend happened, then we could, you know, that's why that was there.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but you mentioned the new people at the boat shows and so forth, but the highest boat sales category are smaller boats with outboards, right?
Oh, yeah, but numbers wise, yeah. However, you look at the annual growth here in Washington State and Puget Sound, and it's been pretty flat for those boats, for the smaller ones. I mean, they're still on Whidbey Island, they're growing.
Now they're just big boats with outboards.
And the 30-footers
Yeah.
haven't grown much,
Wow.
but the 40s and the 50s and the 60s have quite significantly.
That one
Okay.
that was right there on GDOT, holy cow.
Small boat moorage and storage, this contract, we just talked about it. It's also, in my mind, it's linked to how much revenue they're generating, and it ranged from 16,000 to 26,000 per year. It's really a small amount, and the rate is very low. It's a good way to fill the slips, but it's not going to fund a new marina.
Yeah, the discussion at the time was, we knew that empty slips didn't do anything for us
Right,
from a revenue
yeah,
standpoint,
exactly.
and we had them.
Get
So,
something.
yeah.
Well, so that's why I recommend, you know, if you're going to stay with.
But
this,
I remember the discussion about this. This was not intended to be a permanent thing.
No.
Remember, it was supposed to be for that year. And it
Well, it
somehow
worked.
morphed into, let's keep,
I think we
Maybe
can take
55
that
bucks.
and raise that up.
Constitutional right.
One of the things
Yeah.
that I've noticed over my years at the marina are docks with empty slips sustain more damage in the winter because the boats aren't there to absorb some of that energy. And that was part of the reason we did that as well.
Well, I'm only recommending a 3% increase for them. I think we really need to be careful about, what I'm gonna do here. I'm going the wrong way. I think we really need to be careful about those small boats. So I would leave them alone, and, you know, what's happening, I guess probably what I would foresee, and this is what happened in Des Moines, is that they're looking at 3 phases. And the phases are from the north to the south, and all the small slips are to the south. And I would think probably A and B and some of those will be the last ones that, unless you need to get rid of them to do something.
so do you think, Paul, that if Chris went from 55 to 75, that would be, people would walk at that?
They may not, but I'm just afraid that when you come out with a statement saying you're gonna get rid of all of those slips,
No, I
and you're gonna increase their rates, that
well,
there's gonna be feedback.
So But you were saying like you would expect that those smaller slips would be the last to be reconfigured. So
Right.
in the meantime, if you raised it to 75, it generates a little bit more revenue. Some of them might say, the heck with it, I'm gonna put my boat on a trailer and leave it in my yard, which will clear out the slips, which makes it more palatable for whenever you say, hey, we're gonna reconfigure these.
I'm cautiously optimistic something like that would work, and yet we still have the rate at the fence as well. So in terms of looking at what other uses are, particularly if the ramp were rebuilt, and that was a viable way of dealing with those folks, that was easy for them to get. And a lot of them might think, hey, this is even better. Okay, electric fee, you guys are at $12. That's about where everyone else is, or, a little bit higher. It's sort of surprising. Some of them are not much at all. This is basically meter reading and.
We do it by meter, right? I mean,
There's a flat rate of $12.09 a month, and then if you exceed
then
those
meter.
kilowatts that are built into that 12, then you're charged at the meter
Yeah.
rate.
So I wouldn't,
We've typically been a little high on the electrical rate.
but it's not onerous. You look
No,
at
no.
$12 and you've got a 40-foot boat, it's not much. Yeah. I'd say raise that by 5% per year. Transient moorage, I show it here for 30 and a 50-foot boat. The bottom line is that you are right now at $1.20 peak and off peak. And I would recommend, what we saw in the median was $1.30 in the off peak and $1.54. I would recommend you go to $1.25 on the off peak and $1.50 on the peak. We're starting to see some really interesting use of this too even in South Whitby. They've got 2-hour, 4-hour, 5-hour rate. Of course, they're drawing people in and they're going up into town. That's, doing something that would provide that link, being able to get people over there. But we're starting to see a difference in Sunday rates and Saturday rates and weekday rates, and then whether, holidays, that you charge people more if they want to be there at that time. But I don't think you're at that spot.
Yeah, a lot of the Canadian marinas have specific day, Canada Day,
Yeah,
those kind of, rates twice what it was.
yeah.
Normal day.
So it's a little bit of a pop. Then I did throw that at 3%. I'm mindful that this is a small part of the revenue base, and it's tough to grow it without those amenities or connection to amenities.
Wait, before I forget, I did speak with Todd, whatever Todd's last name is, the Island Transit guy.
Todd
And-
Morrow.
Todd Morrow, yeah. He's a nice guy, and he's at least open to considering doing some sort of transit service to the marina. Probably start out with weekends or something.
We've done it tried it so many times.
Well,
over the
but
years.
yeah, but the huge problem was they cannot compete with private haulers. So if you have a cab company in town, it wouldn't touch it under the previous administration, but Todd's a little more open to that sort of.
And they've just introduced those on-call routes too, which just kind of folds into where you can be between certain stops and you can call and get picked up.
So we'll see what happens. I'm optimistic, but film is 11.
For electric fee,
Excuse me, is there a plan to do this, or is there a
No,
marina
it's just-
initiative to put the number
Well,
prominently at the top
What I
of the
told
rank?
Todd was I was gonna start with him, and I said, can you give me a yes, no, or maybe? And he said, well, maybe. So I need to go to the Chamber of Commerce. And because what happens typically in most communities is that the grocery stores subsidize those types of things, because if they go to the marina, pick you up, drop you at the grocery store, and you buy a couple $100 worth of stuff and get back on the bus. So we'll see, but there's a lot of work.
Do we have any Uber drivers in Oak Harbor?
Yeah.
There's 2, I think, there were 2.
There's a lot of door dashers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same situation with electric fee per night, for the transient, $5.75 a night is in line with what other people are charging. You're not out of line on that one, so again, I just grill that at 5%. Storage sheds, okay, so, we looked at, a number of, other places. You're at 72 cents per, I accidentally hit the pad. Here we go. So you're at 72 cents per square foot. That's the way I looked at it, is length and width and area, and then what the rate is per square foot. And my median, I get 87%, 87 cents, and that doesn't include Des Moines. Have you ever looked at what the sheds are being used for?
In our marina,
Yeah,
they're just pure storage sheds, from tenants to non-tenants, household goods, there's cars, all kinds of stuff.
So you never made it to be associated with the marina?
No,
You
there
said-
wouldn't be enough draw for that. From the marina, we have 96 of them and we use approximately 10, so we have roughly 85 of them available to the public. That is
It
way
says
more.
we use
neat
10,
than
it's
you-
the marina uses 10.
Yeah,
Right.
But they're routinely full, are they not?
yes.
Yeah.
So you compare this to other marinas, or did you compare it with
just
other
storage.
vendors?
well, I
Storage
also.
It's really cheap compared to other storage in that.
Yeah.
And they're really basic storage,
Yeah.
they sweat.
Well, I looked
If
at
it rains outside,
Bodega,
it rains inside.
yeah, I looked at Bodega in Best Northwest here in Oak Harbor.
Okay, you did.
And they were, for a large one for Bodega self-service was $1 a foot. And for self-storage, smaller ones, smaller than you have, 77 cents. And Best Northwest is at 87. So I would think based on that, probably you'd still be in the market if you charged 87 cents. And it's not gonna be a big pump of revenue, but
Oh, it's not, yeah.
it's there. In Des Moines, they did have a lot of marina, but I keep thinking about the small boats as well. That may be a way, or that area. Typically, what we hear with the sheds is that as soon as you have to put a lot of money into them, it's not worth having them anymore. If you have to replace roofs or spend a lot of money on them. So you could look at that upland use for something else.
So we're paying our $30,000 to DNR because of the sheds, right?
No, we're not paying any lease money for the upland area. That was the agreement to,
Okay.
that's for the time use.
So the sheds, other than any routine maintenance that you have to do, is pure profit?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's
It's
not
a
a big
minor.
number, but-
No, I.
These are always good things. I mean, they're not only a certain chunk, and they, after the gorge, they were the next biggest revenue piece.
But your point is, well, we can pull out the sheds and go into storage.
Yeah,
Perhaps.
or some other use there.
They are nearly 50 years old and nearing the end of their life.
I'd say ride them as long as you can. I mean, they're really, and that's $100,000, right?
Yeah.
$106,000 was nothing to sneeze about. So if you pop it, that would be like a 10% pop or so from 72 to 87 or 15% pop, be another 15 grand. Yeah, every one of these is gonna help on the margin,
Right.
but none of them are big enough that they're gonna solve your
So
problem.
you said that the revenue is about $160,000 a year?
106,
106. Okay.
yeah. So maybe you get to 125, something like that. Liveaboard fee. You're low on the liveaboard fee. The only one we could find here, South Whitby, is less. And some of them have gotten pretty high. Shilshole Bay ran into a problem. They wanted to raise those rates, but during COVID and whatnot, they had a lot of pushback on impacting people in their living situation in Seattle. Kingston's at $282 now. At $250 plus the leasehold tax. And Everett, Edmonds, and LaConner just raised theirs as well. Oh, no, wait, LaConner doesn't.
They don't have any.
Yeah, or Blaine or Squalicum.
We're winding our program down. So.
How many do we have now? It's less than 30.
About 2020.
22, right?
Yeah, 22, 24 right in there.
Yeah.
So my recommendation on that would be increasing it to the $102 for 2023, and then increasing it 15 or 10% beyond that. I couldn't see how you could get to that median rate,
What is it now?
$78.
Considering all the flap we heard when we're gonna charge more for pump outs, that's gonna cause quite a stir, I'll bet you, if we substantially.
Mine.
Yeah.
We have at that time we had 40 overboard.
Oh, okay.
So we had almost double the amount we have now. And what we finding out is our marina, we don't have the proper restroom facilities and all of those stuff.
Yep.
Okay,
We're at a very comfortable number right now.
hourly rate for staff, Oak Harbor at $75. It's on the low side. And some marinas charge a minimum of 2 hours time if they have a lower rate. I think Everett does. So I think you could increase that to the median at $90 and then increase that at 5%.
That's the rate we charge for extra service.
Right, if you break something in the marina, if you need a tow, if, whatever.
Do we do that anymore? I thought we didn't tow anymore.
Oh, we tow.
Do we? Okay.
We do,
Just
within
in
the
the basin.
confines of the marina.
Yeah.
Okay,
We
so like
don't
if
go
they're
out.
out at the number 2 and they're like, hey, crapped
Oh,
out
you don't
and
do that
drifting.
anymore.
We'll go get you if it's an emergency.
Oh.
But we're not bringing the boat back. We'll throw an anchor overboard and a buoy or whatever if it's sinking.
Okay.
We're only dealing with people outside. of the
This
marina.
is what I've heard from the other marinas as well, liability issues and the
Yep.
general overall cost of
Right.
doing it. Yeah.
Isn't our employee cost about that, including benefits and that? So we aren't making any money on that.
No, no, no.
So $90 would give you a little bit of
Yeah.
an itch on
Yeah.
that.
2 hour minimum, or would you have?
On a
minimum?
tow, it's a 2 hour minimum. On everything else, it's just an hour minimum.
So discount volume for fuel, you're not that far off. We saw the other marinas we looked at are 3 cents per gallon to 10 cents per gallon for 100 gallons. And you're at $1.05. Edmonds offers 10 cents per gallon for tenants using a port fuel card after they receive the training.
A port fuel card,
Filling themselves up.
yeah.
That makes me nervous.
Yeah, I don't
there's
know if
that
would
too.
be that great.
You just wonder how
It may
many
wind up
fill
costing
their fresh
more.
water tanks.
Those absorbents are very expensive.
I think your discount's all right, but getting back to what we were talking about earlier on the margin on fuel, you're at the low end. I look at it, gross sales minus cost of goods sold divided by cost of goods and saying, what's your margin on the cost of goods sold that you're getting?
Well, So we offer the discount, the cheap fuel to entice people to come to the marina, right? Which is our transient mortgage, which is only 5% of our profit. So is the juice really worth the squeeze? Just charge what you know what I mean? Like charge for fuel.
There's a couple things going on with fuel. So us in Des Moines are able to buy fuel cheaper than most other marinas because we're included on the state discount pricing. So we're
From the
paying,
jobber.
yeah, we're paying the same amount for fuel that Public Works is paying to run all their big equipment. We mark it up 60 cents and then pass it on to the tenants. So it is feasible that we can make that 60 cents, 80 cents, or whatever the number lands to be, and still be in the ballpark and increase the margin.
Do you do any fueling with the Navy? They got any boats they fuel with?
No, it's more the
They bring
Coast
their
Guard
own.
when they come by.
Coast Guard does.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
Everett
brings in
got-
their own fuel.
Yeah, so can you go through those numbers again? So we get the fuel, how much cheaper?
I don't know the exact percentage, but it's at a special state discounted price
Okay.
for cities.
It's a contracted price.
Yeah.
It's a contract.
But it's also, there's a volume discount.
And this is only for diesel,
Yeah.
not
Okay.
Not gasoline.
All right.
So then we mark it up 60 cents and then offer our discount on top of that. So I've had other marinas call me and tell me we're selling it at the price they're buying it for.
Okay.
How can we do that?
And, okay,
I explain it.
Yeah.
So you're, in my calculations of your margins, 18% kind of averaged over the last 5 years. It changes. Again, it's,
Right,
buying
based
and
on how much we
selling.
purchase it.
But it's really interesting how this has progressed over the years. When I first started coming to these meetings, it was the price of fuel plus 25 cents.
Mhm.
Then it went to 35 cents. Then it went to 45 cents, and I didn't know it went to 60 cents. But, I thought it was still 45 cents over what you paid for it. But that didn't cover it. And at 60 cents, that seems reasonable. It really does. And so I think that it's an untapped resource. I think we should be selling an awful lot more fuel. And because
But we're
it's
not making
cheaper.
any money.
Well, but you can make money,
But how do you encourage the transients to get?
That's the issue, and it's all goes back to the physical limitations we have. If you have a 55-foot boat and you're coming in and you're looking to buy fuel, you're hanging out alongside me for hours if there's somebody in front of you. It takes a while. We have a real limitation as far as being able to
Mine
do
can
that.
go almost all the way out the Marina.
Yeah, it can. And that's a limitation. So, but boaters, I know most boaters will go out of their way to get cheaper fuel, especially if they're buying 300-400 gallons. So if our fuel is 10 cents a gallon cheaper than somewhere else.
But if we're making zero,
But I don't see how we're making zero.
well, because we're marking it up 18%, and we've got to be paying that on wages for the staff.
Well, let's just figure
That's
it
just the
out.
price of the gallons, like
Yeah.
he's saying, it's not the price it costs to
Yeah.
have.
Yeah,
Duncan
but
or
also
whoever's sitting down there
that Duncan or whoever's there is getting paid whether he's pumping fuel or not. So you can't allocate just his wages to.
Well, because he can be doing something else.
That's true. He absolutely should be doing something else if he's not pumping fuel. So you can't attribute his entire, hourly wage to the fuel. So, I mean, if we know that, let's just say for purposes of this, you pay $3 a gallon for the fuel. You're selling it at $3.60. So, that what's that percentage wise increase?
20%.
Yeah, 20%. So, maybe it needs to up a little bit, but
But then the bulk of our tenants and guests getting fuel are either getting the nickel or they're getting the 20 cents, so that degrades that 60 to
it comes
80.
into that, and it cuts into the margin.
And that's where the margin is significant, because that word's out there, and that's something, if you look in Northwest Yachting, you see that we have a huge ad in there moving forward through voting season, so people know that.
At the time when we were discussing fuel margins and so forth, historically, we felt a responsibility to increase tourism in the community and so forth. And cheap fuel was a way to subsidize that at our expense. But, it's a holistic community, so we tried to do that. For the most part, that's not appreciated or understood in the community. So, yeah, we should charge whatever we can get for it.
I would recommend you start with a 26% margin and not do it on a cent basis because the fuel costs go so much. It'd be nice to just have
Well,
No,
same thing that I just talked
I don't
about.
agree with that at all. I know people shop fuel all the time. When you're buying huge quantities, I think they do shop fuel. And the fact that, Chris may be able to, even just for the locals, if he buys fuel tomorrow and it's cheaper than he bought it the last time, the price goes down. It's not like dollar cost averaging in stocks. You keep buying you keep charging the same thing no matter what you paid for it is, that's not what people expect, nor do I think that's a great idea.
Paul, do any marinas have tenant discount?
We looked into that.
Burge Harbor.
That would be
Harbor.
the one
Burge
with
Harbor.
the card.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have cards, but it's an ID card. You don't pump your own fuel. But I know that people who keep their boat there, they don't have to pay Roche's incredibly high.
I've seen them.
Well, they're so isolated.
I've seen them
And
screw up.
I know
pump it
that
up.
when I became harbor master,
Yeah.
SMAC was transitioning out.
You have a vested
For
interest
the
in
last
making that work.
6 months and the first few months when I was harbor master, every Monday we surveyed certain marinas and then adjusted our price from that. And that created a lot of controversy amongst voters because they would see it one way and then come in and it'd be higher for say, and they'd say, well, why'd your price go up? Well, that's a survey price around us. Versus what we do now, oh, we just got a load. That's why it went up. People saw that a little better. But that is what shoreside gas stations do, right? But it doesn't translate well into the voting.
Well, people know, I mean, voters are pretty savvy when it comes to fuel, I think.
Yeah.
They know what the price of diesel has been. They know what the price of gasoline has been. They know that if you buy today, what the price of crude today was $73 or something. But the demand is really high right now. So fuel prices are staying largely high.
Yeah.
My thinking about this is looking at Des Moines, we recommended, they were like a 13% margin. And they, as Oak Harbor and most marinas needed to figure out how they can have all of their revenue sources. So they're up at 21, 23% now.
So what so we were doing 60 cents and you're saying instead of a cent base, go off of a percentage base.
Yeah. And you're at around, right, an average over the last 5 years was 18% based on that formula, and the other marinas are 26 to 32. So I recommended 26% and adjusting that
Then people would have no reason to go the extra half hour into Oak Harbor to buy fuel.
Well, I don't know, is that much?
No, because we're purchasing fuel cheaper than
We're
the
still
other.
purchasing cheaper.
Yeah,
It would be closer.
it'd be a lot
And
closer.
if we maintain the discounts, that transitions as well.
Well,
Do they
that's
still
another-
publish that fine edge survey every week?
I haven't seen
I
that in
don't
a
think
long
so.
time.
I have to ask Mark Gonzalez when I see him, but I think I still think they publish that on a weekly
Where
basis.
was that?
We came from Mark Gonzalez.
Finance,
where'd you
finance
find it?
publishing.
It was online.
The same
It's
people
all
that do
online,
yeah.
Wagoner.
Yeah, Mark Gonzalez.
right, yeah.
I think there may be enough of that stuff available.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to compare apples and apples.
Sure, because a lot of times they have tax.
Yeah.
Yeah, right,
They show
that's
their tax
true,
price,
too,
we show their
yeah.
pre-tax price.
So,
Yeah.
so you think you're buying $1 a gallon.
Yeah.
It's 3 times that. But getting back to the issue of fuel, we also, in working with the rest of the community, that's how we got into the discounted fuel purchase for spending the night in the marina, 20 cents
Right.
a gallon off, and that's too rich.
Yeah, it
We
is.
just need to establish what a fair price is. and stick with it. I think.
I think so.
I agree.
I think so,
I
too.
agree.
Now, the bulk quantity discount, I see that, but
Oh, yeah, because,
again,
somebody's got to walk down.
again,
there
our
and
transient
offer
mortgage is only 5% of our
Yeah.
revenue, so.
Chris, are we still having people coming down there to fill their lawnmower gas cans with the,
No, occasionally, yes, but not like we
With
used to,
the-
because when they switched the pump over there at the farmer's store from
Yeah.
kerosene,
yeah,
as people would come down, we would educate them and say, hey,
Yeah,
they're
that's-
selling
I was
this
gonna-
over
yeah,
at
And
the
that,
farmer's
that
store.
pump is fairly busy.
it is, yeah, I waited in line for that pump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the Scandinavian Farmer Supply.
So it's very rare.
So,
Okay, good.
the one that's right outside there.
People are buying canned fuel.
Turn on the edge of the building.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're buying
I buy it at
canned
the
fuel.
marina because I work there.
I'd rather do that than
I would buy it
pay
at the
Paul
farm.
Burst to rebuild my,
Yeah, we have that.
my
and it's-
edge.
it's
I
It's
use a
way
lot of
better.
gas in my stuff.
Yeah, I have too.
Just a few more to go through here. And these are sort of the other fees. Environmental fees, you're at 821 a month. Other marinas that we talked to were 3 to 13. Cap Sandy, for example, is 3, 13 in Everett and Edmonds.
So is that like, do we charge our environmental fee, like, hey, this is what it costs when we pay like it's
On a
a zero
monthly-
profit?
On a-
Or
well-
or do the other marinas make a profit off of the environmental?
Well,
It's a hard one to say,
yeah,
because if we don't have any issues where we don't have to use any of the equipment,
Mhm.
then
It's a freebie.
it's a profit. But
Okay,
if we have to break out the booms and the pillows and the pads, it gets really expensive. That stuff is very
I got you.
expensive.
it's like an insurance
It is.
policy, really,
Okay.
yeah.
So is this a discretionary thing? We don't have to charge this, right?
No, we don't. It's rolled into the mortgage piece though.
Yeah.
So like whatever your mortgage bill is, it's
Yeah.
included in there.
Yeah, I know that.
$8 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of thought it was coming from the state. or
I
something like that.
misunderstood. I thought the
No, I don't
fee
think
was
so.
something different.
Initially.
Well, it's a good point though. I mean, you have to look at what it costs you. If you had to have one person that was taking care of environmental for you, then that would generate 15%.
Kind of depends on your community. There are some communities that have really rabid people about the environment. You know, they freak out if they see a couple of drops of fuel in the water.
Gate cards and fobs, you charge $11.90 for a gate key, $17.87 for fobs. Other marinas that we surveyed were $10 to $20 for those items. So I would say just keep with that and do it 3% per year. Towing, you're in the ballpark there as well. $168, 2 staff for 2 hours. And other marinas are in the $100 to $260 per month. And we tow in the basin. So I think that would, at 3%. Kayak storage and dinghy storage, you don't have it right now. Other marinas are charging $10 to $48 per month. That's a whole other item of potential for bringing people down and providing some more services for another part of the community. And getting some park funding for this as well, that I think would fit it right in with what Brian's trying to do.
Now I did it in freshwater. It can almost be an easier place to do it
We
over
could fill in those bocce ball courts.
at Windjammer or the bocce ball course, yeah.
Or use a storage shed or what have
Kayaks?
I have never seen anybody use it.
Kayaks and paddle boards.
Yeah, that's, some of these are covered, but you
Just
can
take
get
the door
like,
off.
yeah,
Chain them up.
yeah.
Yeah, so for example, we talked to South Woodby Yacht Club. They incorporated kayaks and paddle boards to their yacht club, and it increased their membership by like 60 members. And so there's just like where we're at, and we looked at it because we have somebody in our club that runs a kayak business, so you up by Deception Pass. There's just no real easy way to get down to the water along that part because it's all rock. You'd have to somehow go down to the marina and down the ramp and all that other stuff, so it becomes a little problematic.
And
we know
depending on what you're doing, I mean, I think about what Roach Harbor has there in terms of kayak operations, it's phenomenal.
So, they must make a lot of money because they're during the season, the kayaks are all gone.
Well, they have a nice calmer area in the bay, don't they? And you got more.
Well, they're getting out of the bay, I think these
Oh,
folks
yeah,
are.
they're everywhere. They go right outside the marina.
I'm really surprised in
Not a wise
Bellingham.
thing to do.
Some kayakers were telling me they go to the San Juan Islands from Bellingham in a kayak.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
We have people
I
that
just
go
got
over
it in the fog.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I interrupted you though,
We
Chris.
have people that go to Coopville. That's about a 5-minute out.
Right.
Yeah,
So we made them where I came from, the city. We just built them ourselves, and Public Works are not too complicated.
Yeah, I wouldn't think
The
so.
problem is people would put their own cell phone on it. Somebody would see a slip that's open and just they wouldn't realize that it's restricted. You'd have to cut it off and impound their kayak because the next person would come along and, person who's out there would come along and their space was gone, so.
Did the guy who rents his kayaks out of the truck along Pioneer, did he ever approach the marina about working out of there?
No, and he wasn't there last year, was he?
I think he
Not
was.
last year.
It wasn't there last year?
Oh, he would park on the side of the road. He had a Jeep or something.
And he had a whole bunch,
He had a trailer with
Yeah.
like 6 guys.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
no,
right by
I
the
had
stairs
very
that
little
went down.
interaction with him.
So they go in the stairs. Oh, that's why he just used the city.
he just used the,
Didn't Mark Gall have a kayak rental thing at one time?
At one time he
Kayak
did,
store.
yeah. Over there where Harbor Freight is right now. He had an outdoor recreation rental store.
But he's never tried to do
Was
that
that
for
for-
his current location.
it was Terry Mills. Wasn't Terry Mills involved with that?
They might have been partners.
Yeah.
But Mark Gall was
Yeah.
owning and running it when I was
Yeah.
talking to him. Actually, bought a kayak rental.
so late fee charge, I wasn't really able to compare these. You're at 7%. Most of the other ones I looked at are in the $10 to $20 range. I don't know whether that equated to.
Now that we've gone to dock, did that reduce The number of late payments?
Yes.
And then the Marina comps that we looked at, but that kind of runs you through all of them. And getting back to the same picture is, you gotta find some way to generate money with what you've got right now. And that's why I would recommend those rate increases and work them in on that median and do it over a 3-year period. And what I've seen others do is when you say you have 3 phases and you get 1 phase that gets rebuilt, then those rates are higher than what's the existing rate. But I think you need to raise everything right now and start generating some more cash flow.
And kind of like Blaine said, it makes it more palatable to the city, saying, we're doing all we can do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's something different here. This isn't a board of directors, we advise the city, and the city council makes the ultimate decision. They generally go along with what we recommend, but it just takes a while.
It would be interesting to, if we eventually go ahead with a recommendation to the council that we do this, it would be interesting to hear the reaction of the marina tenants and even the non-marina tenants who just like to bitch about things, about the draconian raising rates. And that's, we'll hear it. We'll absolutely hear it.
Well, yeah, and the issue in my mind is not, gee, what are you doing for this extra money and so forth? What we're doing for it is trying to save the
Say
marina.
Marina.
If we're gonna have a marina, we have to figure out how to pay for it. So this whole thing about, I want concierge service.
Well, like, I agree with you. Yeah,
Sure.
like paying more for like,
I just wanted my
Yeah.
vendors don't hop up on my little dock.
but
Everybody just slow down.
yeah, just getting the understanding of it's just, like you said, the cost of just keeping it afloat.
Yeah.
Or floating
Keep our
higher.
fingers
Floating higher, I would like it to see. And I don't want to be paying, depreciating my dock when it sinks.
I think the message that we need to share with our tenants and the public is we're not quite at a crisis financially or dock-wise, but we're heading in that direction and it's time to cut that off and
I don't know, I might take it a different approach. I would say we are at a
I'd
crisis.
say we are in a
We are in a
crisis.
crisis.
And we're
And
in
we're
an
not-
existential crisis.
And we're not gonna rate increase our way out of this crisis.
No.
We're gonna
this is
do
a
it,
step.
it's gonna do everything we can
Yeah.
to make it so we can get some help.
And at the
But
same time, we recognize we're in a market where you.
It's pretty, it's
You
a
can't just
competitive
do whatever
market,
you
right?
want
That's
to do.
right.
it's a good market for you right now.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's really good, Paul. Thank you so much.
Hey, listen, my pleasure.
And we'll work on it together. Can we circle back to the revenue and expenses for 2022 for just a minute?
Sure.
I'm gonna head out.
Okay, thanks. I'll be in
Thanks,
touch.
guys.
I'll
Thank
take
you.
care.
Thanks, Paul.
I'll say hi to
Absolutely.
the people from Seaview. I'm gonna see them all.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're coming up to the Grand Banks Rendezvous up the road.
Oh, yeah.
So they're very generous, so I'll see them all up there.
Yeah, I will probably. Sounds good. All right, thanks.
So hot off the press is the accurate one, and again, I apologize for that. It looks like our year-to-date revenues for January through December was roughly $3.1 million.
Yeah, but, yes, okay, so the one that you gave me,
Negative.
no, well, this says, so we got total revenues of 3 million, and the
Right.
one that you gave me a week ago said 1.9 million.
Yeah,
So if we really did have,
And,
yeah.
and there's some totally, like, we
Yeah,
got
there's.
intra-fund transfer of
Yeah.
900,000, what's that?
This is 21.
This is 21 too. This is one that Chris gave me a month ago, a preliminary one.
Yeah, there
21.
was
No, I'm
a-
giving you 22.
this is 22.
This is 21.
Oh, wait, oh. Yeah, yeah,
You
he
should
gave
have
me both.
22 in there somewhere.
Yeah, he gave me both.
Let's get apples to apples.
There was another
In the last year, there was
Yeah.
another interfund transfer of 220,000 transferred out.
This doesn't make any sense, because I'm looking at the revenue for the calendar year 2022 as exposed.
I'm looking at the expenditure.
I'm looking at both, and it's the same number. 3,112,856. It's the exact same number compared to what the other sheet.
Which one are you looking at?
I'm looking at the revenue from 1/22 to 12/22.
Right,
Says the grand total of revenues, okay, it's 3,091,000.
Yep.
Okay. And if you look at the expenditures in 2022, that number is 2,472,000. So there, we made over $500,000.
$618,000.
Is that what it comes out to?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
okay.
So, which is a,
And that covers our debt service.
that covers the debt service. So now
Yes.
that's an anomaly, because Paul told us that we've been making historically about 180,000, right?
The X factor is at
Is
the
what?
very bottom on the last page of the revenue, this
Yeah.
$902,000.
Yeah, what is that?
Which
What
I'm
does that
not
mean?
sure what that
Okay,
is. This is
okay.
the first time I've seen that, so I do not know.
There is, on page 4 of the year ending 2022 expenditure status report,
Page 5,
page 4,
page 4.
the intrafund transfers, the last category down there, there's 220,000 number.
But we transferred out 95.
So what are we transferring funds out for?
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah, there's a lot of questions
Yeah.
there. And Chris is right in the fact that this $902,000 number doesn't,
That would mean that we lost $300,000 somewhere along the way.
if that's correct. Because,
I appreciate you running it off the correct report for us. I'll be.
What I'll
smarter
do
about
is
it.
we'll carry this over to the next meeting and maybe get
Okay.
Dave here.
Yeah.
I can't blame him.
come on, Blaine.
I'm teasing.
Come on, Blaine.
And we do need
Yeah, I know.
to, when we make our recommendation, we do need to craft it for our city council. I mean,
Sure.
And there's gonna be a workshop presentation, right?
Right, so the way it would go is we would get a recommendation here. Paul will give his presentation to the city council probably in the coming meetings, I would say. And we're moving into a phase where we only have one meeting a month. Get a recommendation at this level, go to the workshop, and then go to the city council.
So what we're gonna be, I think, what we ought to be looking at is whatever an initial increase might be across the board. Given the slip configuration we have, we don't have time to the luxury of doing all that other stuff yet, so.
The challenge is, do we do that immediately and as quick as possible as Marina is getting fuller and fuller, or do we wait and do it September?
Well, we're bleeding money.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we are.
I think it's gotta be.
It's gotta be
I
sooner
think
than
you're right.
So if you wait, you got a minimum, you didn't do your 3%.
No.
Well, we came at the end of our 3-year plan.
Yeah.
right? So-
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so we didn't do the automatic 3% increase that we had in the prior 3 years.
Yeah. And basically,
So-
we just submitted in the schedule.
So I'd like to ask how you guys feel about, our next meeting, it isn't typically until September, but I penciled in at probably a June 5.
I think we
I,
need to do
that's, I
that.
wasn't
Yeah.
sure what you guys wanted to
Yeah,
do.
we
I
need
put
to
it
do
as.
that.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah, we got
And I'm
gonna be
concerned
around,
about
I think.
about these numbers here, and what the 900,000 is.
Yeah.
And did we really make $600,000 last
Yeah,
year? I can't
I
imagine
can't
that.
imagine.
Yeah.
But that's, this is what the numbers say.
Well, I don't know what these numbers say.
Yeah, ish, yeah.
Yeah, ish.
Well, we had our financing in 2022, didn't we?
Yeah,
So it's gonna speed
Yes.
things.
Well, no, it was in 2021. We
Yeah, we did the
refinanced the bond.
you're right, you're
the-
right.
the-
You're right.
The impact should have
Should have
been
been,
a whole year in
Yeah.
2022.
Right.
So it shouldn't
And-
skew it.
So
No.
the principal reduction that we were required to make was like $350,000. And the projected interest was, I think, 12,000, something like that.
And when I went back and looked at the amortization schedule, those numbers weren't on there. I mean, they were kind of close, but they weren't the same. So I don't know what the actual amortization of the current debt is.
Yeah, we've got a 6-hour trip to Roche on Wednesday. I'm gonna give this to Kathy and let her see if she can make any sense out of it, because she's, well, I mean, she's not a government, she's not a government accountant, but, yeah, but she's also been doing this for
Sure.
40 years, so she.
Apparently you need a copy of the.
I just have one
RCW.
quick question.
Yeah.
When it comes to rates, so we were talking about adjusting rates, like hypothetically, let's say we want to raise the rates 8%, right? Like Blaine said, we didn't do the 3% that we were supposed to, so would it be a 3% plus the 8%? Or just?
No, I
okay.
don't think so.
All right,
No,
I was
it's
just saying
the
where that,
I
recommendation
don't
that
know.
he gave you.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, he was in the.
No, I'm
3
just saying hypothetically, we had talked about it, like originally, we were supposed to do
Oh,
a
and
3%, and we didn't, correct?
Yeah, I'd like to.
Well, we came at the end of our 3 years,
Right.
so we didn't have a projection for
Oh, okay.
2023.
I'm with you.
So we opted to wait until we got this
Got this.
information.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to, we see what these numbers.
I'm with you, sorry.
Let me give you a quick update before we go on, just a couple of things. The launch ramp, you guys have seen that, they're
Yeah.
working over there, it's coming along. They drilled the holes, they put the studs in, epoxied them in, and the pile structure is just gonna sit over that for a few days while that epoxy cures, so that's super exciting. Our diesel pump was shooting more diesel out the bottom of it than the hose.
No,
Yeah, so the meter
That
blocks.
is not good.
that's not good.
No, luckily
Tubeville is,
Dick was down there and he heard that and was able to stop it, so it wasn't too big of a catastrophe, but that's scheduled to be fixed on Wednesday, which is awesome, puts us back in business
for the weekend.
for the
Nice.
weekend, so
It's
that's
supposed to be nice, too.
great.
Yeah, it's supposed to be warm.
Yeah, Mariners Haven keeps ticking along. It just keeps moving along, let's put it that way for now, not to go into deep on
We're
that.
still doing environmental studies.
We're doing environmental studies and we did a building study and found out that the front building needs considerable amount of work.
Did you have to do more soil samples?
Yes,
And what, is there any bad news in the soil samples?
we haven't heard yet. Okay.
The initial phase was.
Yeah, the initial
Yeah,
phase
I know,
was
I
great,
know that,
it was
yeah.
awesome,
Yeah.
so that's good. And the dredge project keeps moving forward.
Where are we in that?
Still planning.
Permits, are we applying for permits?
The
So
council
what they're-
approved the engineering contract
Right.
like 3 or 4 weeks ago, something like that. You know, they're spending our money.
Yeah, I know,
but-
yeah.
But it gotta go through the city
Yeah,
council
yeah.
and they authorized the mayor to sign the contract with
Moffett.
Hoffman Nichols. And so that happened.
That happened and they're looking at still tying in the dredging in with the redevelopment and engineering that in the phases. So they haven't applied for the permit yet. They expect that in the next month or two because they're trying to figure out how all the pieces are gonna move together and what we're gonna do. And that's.
When we did this last time, the permitting was a real time limiting step.
It is
Took a
even worse
long-
You think it
now.
will take more than 3 years to
Right.
recover?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we are looking at roughly $1 million in mitigation.
And the Reed Middleton people are pretty good at getting things. I won't use the term expedited, but you know, they get things done.
So
And they have a good reputation with this.
I feel like we're moving along pretty good on the dredging.
Have you given thought to how we would do this in the marina? Where we would put people? Where you would put boats?
It's gonna be a big shuffle. I would envision rafting and everything possible to keep people in the marina or give them the option to go seek moorage elsewhere, but still maintain their.
We've got about
slip
4 or
here.
5 years to work that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but it's gonna be,
It might take 4 or 5 years.
it's gonna be a shell game.
Yeah.
No doubt about that.
It would be great, you know, I hadn't thought about, you know, net tying and stuff, you know, if we could figure out a way to use the outside of F dock. That would be-
Yeah.
Ooh, that's-
Ooh,
And it's too much wind.
That would be a, yeah,
Too much
well, I wouldn't want
Yeah,
to.
even in the summertime, even
Yeah, it's too much
westerly.
That steel channel is right above the
Yeah.
water line. Though.
You know,
we could get rid of derelict boats. Now is your opportunity to get your vessel underway within 72 hours.
Yeah.
You could have,
Or on the hard you go.
take the roofs off a D-dock, you have people backing in and tying their bow lines to those pilings on the very end.
Yep.
That's how they do it. Every marina on the East Coast, that's what they do.
You make those rings that float up and down.
Mhm.
That's how you do that.
Well, you can include all your good ideas in the email to Chris.
That's right.
Don't copy me, please.
Anything else?
And,
No, that's it.
I can bring up some grant updates.
sure.
Okay.
Grand updates.
Yeah, the congressional direct spending request, Cantwell didn't go forward with it. She said that her office said that we had to be on the list for the Army Corps. So I'll push the Army Corps, figure out what the Corps, see what the bureaucratic thing was doing there. We do have the Rural County Economic Development, and the council authorized $2 million request for the rural county that's due on the 16th. So Chris is working on that right now. So we'll continue to look at revenue sources, and sometimes with grants like these, you get it the second or third time. So you figure out what we did wrong, we learn from it, and so I think that's what we'll do. We'll learn from it
Gotta keep
and
asking.
start prepping it. That's on an annual basis, is a good thing with the Fed. That's an annual budget, so we'll continue to work on that and talk more with the Army Corps. Continue to work on the issue with the channel too, so just early discussion there. Of course, their initial point, the regional guy pretty much said, oh, it's not, there's nothing to substantiate it as a federal channel, so we'll have to continue that discussion. on that.
So that's what it's gonna take to get on the Corps list.
Yeah.
Is
Well, the
there's gotta
Homeland
be
Security
a
votes, you
real
know.
reason, right?
No, it's only gonna take a congressional direct spending. They'll never put it in
They'll
their
never-
budget.
Okay.
So in order to do it, we'll have to get the Congress to put it in their spending, even if it's for them. But if we get it on their list and get it on their point, then I won't end up with what I did with them having the excuse that it can't go in there. So that's what we got with our own dredging.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they won't put it into the regular operating budget. It's not in their priority.
How often would the Navy have to use that channel for it to be considered a federal channel?
I can't answer that question because I can't get anybody
Homeland Security.
to talk
Yeah,
about
they
it.
do.
So we're
I think we'll vote there.
We're gonna meet with a regional person and have construction, and that's just gonna be an ongoing
Yeah.
issue with
Well-
the Corps on it, so, I mean, historically, it doesn't matter, it's, the Navy did a lot of work on it and substantiated it. I don't know with the Mailer's Point, whether that was considered there since 1906 or something like that, burned down in 66, so, but nobody's looked at anything since the 60s, so nobody has anything, and if it's out of sight, they don't care.
Yeah.
And so that's what the status we're in. We're out of sight, we're not on anything. We've been doing the marina dredging every 10 years, and I don't know that they ever equated the two together. And I'd be interested if there was any discussion in the past, but we certainly can't find any discussion on whether there was any push. So we're really starting fresh here and need to do a real uphill battle of learning how to deal with these bureaucracies to get what's going on. But we started it on the plus side. We knew it was going to be a longer process, especially for the channel issue. I was hoping we'd get better news on the dredging, but we'll continue to work on it, work for grant funding.
Chris, I'd just like to get an attaboy for the Holland Happening Parade. And
That worked out good.
now, this might be a stretch, but I really think it might have saved a life. In that I was down there at the marina during the Holland Happening Parade, and there was the cops were walking down the dock, and I asked Neil what it was all about, and there was some young crazy guy had jumped off the end of the dock,
Oh,
was gonna swim across the bay.
no, he was going to swim to Alaska.
Oh, Alaska, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that was, yeah.
And you stopped him?
No, well, the youth sailors, the youth sailors happened to be out
Yes,
there, and
that's
they pulled them out. Now, the youth sailors wouldn't have been there if the marina had been closed,
That's right.
and, you know.
You should have let him
We saved a
go.
life.
See how far he got.
Had that been a day like last Friday, when it was raining so hard, that would have ended an entirely different way,
Yeah.
I'm sure. So, you're probably right.
Well, thank you for your time and attention, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And,
Turn off the camera.
we'll, yeah, stop recording.
You have to do it here. I'm gonna try. Where's?
Would you like to introduce yourself?